All right. Okay, let's get started. I hope this works out well. Could you let me know once you hear me? This is the first time I'm doing this, so let's hope this works well. Cool. Right, I think we have a small delay. So the idea for this webinar will be to go through kind of the basics of the Facebook Ads API, and we'll start with just getting an access token and making a few API calls to see what that's like. And hopefully we can get a little bit of live data from your campaigns and also read out some metadata like budgets or bids. And then let's see how far we get. But ideally, this is kind of the first webinar out of a series, and we can do this more often, looking at maybe dabbling a little bit with Python at a point, or working with Google Sheets and pulling some data. But this is really kind of the first starting point to make sure that everybody is actually able to do this. So I'm going to be sharing this from my other screen. And the starting point, and I already put it into the agenda just below the video, would be to start creating a Facebook app, then to get the credentials, make a first API call, then read out some data, and then make some changes to existing ads and adsets. So the first thing that you'll need to do is actually create a Facebook app. And to do that, and I hope you can follow along. This is, the idea was for you to follow along, but if not, you can always obviously look at it at a later point as well. So if you go to developers.facebook.com, that is the starting point, and I'm going to do the same. And this is what this looks like. In order to get access to the Ads API, what we need to do is create a new application. So we can do this here, creating app. You can see here, I already have a few apps. This one I created yesterday, and then this is the Kitchen.io app, which is the business I'm working on. You can also create test applications, etc., etc. Just for you to notice right now, the docs part here is really useful. If you ever want to look up anything, this is kind of where you find it. And also under tools, you'll be able to find some interesting stuff here. But I'll just kind of go through the flow of creating an app. It's super simple. All you do is you say, you give it a name. I'm going to call it My Webinar Test App. You can leave your standard Facebook email address, or you can change it. In this case, I'm going to put in my Kitchen.io email address, and then you get an app ID. You may have to do a security check, like I do. And there we are. So the first thing that makes sense to look at is all of these custom or like predefined products by Facebook. And we obviously don't care about any of these. If you, for example, want to read out leads from lead ads at some point, I think you can do this with webhooks. The thing that we care about right now is the marketing API. So click on Setup here. And this now added the marketing API here at the bottom left as a product. So this is almost it to get started. So there are a lot of different settings that you can make. If you actually want to run this, as a public application for anybody to use, you would need to, publish this up here. And if you wanted to do that, you would need things like a privacy policy and, all kinds of things. We don't need that. So right now, it's kind of an internal application. We have our app ID up here. And the only other thing that we need right now is an access token. And generally, there are two ways to get this access token. to give you a bit of background, access token is essentially like a username and password combination that only works for this particular app ID. So if I now get an access token, that means the Facebook API will be able to say, yes, this is Simon, and he actually used the My Webinar Test app owned by himself. But any other call is done in the same way. So to get an access token, there are two ways, like I said before. One is going here to Tools, and you can choose to get an access token. For now, we well, let me say it differently. You can choose to get different token permissions. So if you just want to read out some data, for example, if you want to read out data and store it in a Google Sheet at some point, maybe we'll get to it today, but if not, we'll do it in another time. It probably makes sense only to get the ads read access, because the access token that I'm about to generate actually gives whoever has it access to any of my ad accounts. So you should be careful with it. If we want to make changes, we will also need the ads management access token. So you can do this here. Ads read insights. Read insights, I think, is also self-explanatory. That gives just the right to read information about the performance of your campaigns. So you can click all of them, you can click one of them. We will need all of them eventually. So if you click here on get token, I'm not going to do it right now because otherwise you would be able to see that access token. This is the first way of doing it. The other way of doing it is doing it through the Graph API Explorer. And to get there, and you can just follow along, all you need to do is go at the top to Graph API Explorer. And you should be able to see this overview. And so this is actually where we're going to stay for today, and where we'll do all of our little experiments, requesting data from our own ad accounts. And if you have access to multiple apps already, maybe through Employer, or maybe you've played around with something yourself, make sure you choose the one that you actually want here. So I'm going to choose My Webinar Test app. And I'm going to say get a user access token. So this is what we want, get a user access token. And this just now opened up a new dialog that you can't see right now. But you will have to kind of go through the standard login with Facebook flow. And here we need to add the permission. In this case, we want ads management and ads read access. So if you didn't do this before, if you didn't do it on the screen before, do this now. So we need a user token, we need these permissions, we need the app that you just created, and I'm going to click again, generate user access token. That should open up a new window for you, where you now, similar to how when you access your account through a tool, for example, through Hours, Kitchen.io, or if you do it through Smartly or AdEspresso, where you kind of have to give access to this application. No, only in this case, it's your own application. All right. Would be great if you could quickly let me know if that worked for everyone. If anybody has struggles, let me know. Then we'll get to the next step. Cool. All right, so I hope that worked for everyone. If you do not have an access token right now, or you joined in later, here is briefly what you need to do. Create an app at developers.facebook.com, get an access token under the bottom side, under products, and create an access token and copy that over and go over to the Graph API Explorer. So just to briefly get kind of do a little bit of theory, and I'm not the biggest expert on all of this. I'm a marketer who taught this myself. So I'm sure there are other people who could do an even better job. But there are a few things that make sense to know before diving in. And that is kind of what are the different elements that exist, or objects that exist on the Facebook Ads API. Generally, we can differentiate between these three elements. The first one is objects, which in this case, I think fairly self-explanatory, could be things like an ad account or a campaign or an ad, or even like a custom audience or something like that. And so these all have a different ID. So if we want to access any of these elements, we need its ID. Obviously, they all have a name as well, but we'll need IDs. Edges are objects that have that stand in relation to another object. So for example, an ad account would have a campaign edge, because when you know an ad account, you can ask it for all of its campaigns. You can also ask it for all of its adsets, ads, audiences, whatever you like. If you're looking at a campaign, you could ask it for its ad account, right? Its parent ad account. But at the same time, you could ask it for, the adsets that belong to this campaign, etc. Then the last one is parameters, right? Or params. These are essentially, when making API requests, are just ways to tell Facebook what you care about. For example, you could ask Facebook, hey, I want all campaigns from one ad account, but I only want 2 of those. I don't want to see any else. And when you get those campaigns, I actually care about getting certain information about these campaigns. So I don't just want the ID, but I also want the name. Right? And another option would be to say, actually, I want to filter. So when I get all of these campaigns from an ad account, I only want those that are active. Or maybe I only want the top 3 that are active, etc. So I hope it's not too complicated. Just these were things that we'll need right now to dig into the Graph API Explorer. And I just kind of would like to go through a couple of exercises with you, and hopefully you can follow along. Doing this live on the API Explorer. So we'll start with the first bit, and that is getting a little bit of information about yourself. So the first thing that you could do is just actually run this request that is up here at the top already in there, and you can see this already. We're making a GET request. It's one of 3 types of requests that we can make to the API. I think we can get into it later. Usually when we don't want to change anything, we just want to retrieve information, we do a GET request. And you have a version number here as well. And then we can have a path. This is what we call the path of the request. So if I do this, what we get is my Facebook user ID and my full name. And if you remember now what I showed you just now, fields in this case is a parameter, right? Fields is a parameter. And these are all of the different fields that we're asking. And so now the Graph API Explorer actually gives us quite a bit of information. What else is possible? So what else can I, ask about myself? And in this case, I can do a lot of different things. So for example, I can say, what is my first name? Well, that's a bit obvious, but my first name is Simon, or Simon. And there are a bunch of other things that we can find out. And so one thing that is interesting to look at is accounts. And I hope you can do this too. So when you click this, accounts, apparently it doesn't give me any information. All right. I realize now why. I'm actually in the wrong window. I was supposed to be in this window. I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to ask for accounts. Okay. And this didn't work. And the reason for that is that I didn't give Facebook the right permissions for this. So accounts in the in this Facebook universe, for whatever reason, are actually pages. So if you want to access your pages, we also need the right permissions here. Right now, I think we don't care about that. What we care about is ad accounts. So again, if you want to change the path, so if I want to find the ad accounts I have access to, I can do this by putting the ID, the name. So this is my ID, my name, and these are the ad accounts that I have access to. And if I run this, I now see all of the ad accounts that I have access to. Facebook automatically uses something called pagination. That means it will only, by default, give you 25 elements back. So if I ask it for accounts, ad accounts in this case, it will only actually give me top 25. So what you could do here is you can now ask for ad accounts that I have access to and give me something like a name or some other information. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set a limit. In this case, I'm going to set a limit of 3. We've used this before as well. So now I only get access to the first 3 ad accounts. And on the left, I can now say, actually, I care about the name of this ad account as well. So I can do this here. So these are some ad accounts that I have access to. Maybe you can play around with this a little bit and find one ad account. So find one ad account that you actually have access to where you've run some ads. And I am going to do the same. Make sure that this ad account had at least spent in the last 90 days or something like that. So you can see here already the ID. This is a very strange thing. All account IDs start with ACT underscore. ACT underscore. So I actually just copied over the account that I want to work with from my ads manager. And I'm going to paste it here. And when I do this, so this is the simple ID, right? When I do this without ACT underscore in front of it, it will tell me that the object doesn't exist. So for me to access this ad account, I need to add ACT underscore. And there we go. So I now have access to my ad account, my first ad account. And next, I want to find out a little bit of information about this. So the first thing that I would like to do is actually get some insights. So insights in the Facebook world is called is performance data in that sense. And I'm going to do another quick aside here, and I'll introduce you to the API graph API reference. The way to get there, let's do it differently. The way to get there is by going to Docs, right? So you can open this in a new tab and scroll all the way down until you see Marketing API. And to now access this, we should go again all the way to the bottom where it says reference. So the reference is a really great starting point if you want to figure out what type of information is available for each object. So if we scroll down a little bit, now we can see here the reference bit. What we're looking at right now is the ad account object. So I'm going to click on ad account here. And as soon as we do that, we actually learn quite a bit about the ad account already. And I think I may have to in a little bit. Maybe one more. Okay. I hope you can still read this. If not, I hope you can you have it open on your screen as well. So if you do this on the right-hand side, you actually see everything that is possible with an ad account, right? So we can skip the first bits that are not so important. They're more important about the limits that you have, how many API calls are you able to make, etc. But if you go to the reading part, which is what we're doing, we're reading out information, you actually get to see some examples, and interestingly, you get parameters, fields, and edges. And let's go here, click on address. As you can see here, and I explained this before, an ad account has access to a lot of different things, right? So for example, if you have an ad account and you want to get all of its ads, you can do this, right? And you can also get all of its ad pixels, videos, campaigns, etc. So what we care about actually is insights. And I think the way this is called, I don't know why it doesn't show up here, but I'll show it to you here anyways. So as I showed before, in the showing up as an edge here, we can actually put a / and ask it about any type of information that we want that showed up as an edge. And we can also ask it insights, right? Not quite sure why it didn't show up. I think maybe the insights show up as a separate reference point, what I showed to you before. So if we're looking at this account, this is a super small account that we're using for some lead generation ourselves. And in the past 30 days, right? So in the past 30 days, as you can see, we spent 203.72 euros. If I only ask it about insights without putting any additional parameters here, it would just give us this standard information. So it will tell us, hey, there is this ad account. This is the date, the starting point of the information that you requested. Here's the end point of the information requested, right? It's last 30 days, similar to what you would see in Ads Manager. And we have 11,731 impressions. So what you can do is you can actually change this answer by adding more information here. So what you can do is you can say, actually, I care about a different time frame, and we do that by using the date preset parameter. Date preset. I'll zoom in a little bit again so you can see better. Date preset, and what we can do here is, for example, we can say last 3 days, right? So it's last _3D in this case. And if you go to the reference and in here search for date preset, and go into the Insights API here. And on this page again, I'm going to search for date preset. This is not so helpful. I should have prepared this better. Let me go here, parameters. There's a parameter, right? We talked about this before. There we go. So now I found this. This is kind of the name of the game, right? Searching for the right information at the right place. So in this case, the date preset parameter actually allows all of these different inputs. So if you notice from the Ads Manager, they actually only allow, I think, up to 28 days, maybe 30 days. But what you can do here is you can actually ask information about last 90 days. You can ask about this week, next week. You can ask about it this year or last year, etc. So we can do this here. I'm going to say last 3 days. And I get no data because we didn't run any ads in the last 3 days. I can choose last 90 days. And now we can see here the information that came back actually showed up 90 days ago. You can, as I said before as well, you can use this year. And we get the whole year. And something else interesting you can do is you can actually break this down by day. And the parameter that we used for this here is something called time increment. And to add another parameter to this request, we add an ampersand, and then we say time increment equal. And there are a bunch of different options that you can do. First, you can use any integer, so any number from 1 to 90. So we could say 4 or 7 if we wanted to get weekly information. You can also say monthly, and then the information that would come out here would be broken down by month. So I'm going to do that now. So as you can see here now, I got the same information that I just got before, but I have data from February, March, and April. And in January and May, we didn't run any ads. I can also do this if I put a 1, right? I get the daily dates. And again, if we kind of scroll down all the way here, we get this information. So one thing that you already see here is now we have this pagination happening again. And in order to stop this from limiting the number of requests we get, because we only got 25 days here, we can actually add a limit parameter. So we can say limit equal to, and then the maximum you can put here is 5,000. And I'm going to do that now. And now we got information all the way till the 22nd of April. All right. So we got a bit of information here. So the interesting thing to understand is that any type of object we put here will actually give us the same amount of data. So if you have a campaign ID, if you have an adset ID, if you have an ad ID, you can ask the exact same information. The only thing you can't do is using a business manager ID. So if you're working with multiple ad accounts on business manager, you need to actually do this individually each time. But we can talk about that another time. So what I want you to do now is go here and request some campaigns. So we're now accessing all campaign objects on this ad account. And we'll do this here. So the problem again now is I have campaign IDs, but I don't know what they are. So what you can do here is you can add the question mark again to add a parameter. In this case, the parameter is fields, and we'll add ID and name. And if I run this now, I actually get all of the names as well. So in this case, these are actually some lead campaigns that we ran, and there's some, campaigns that we didn't run. These are just kind of empty templates. So if you click in the Graph API Explorer, if you click on this ID now, it will automatically switch over to this campaign. So either you can copy this over, right, and then click submit, or you just click on it. And now we're on a campaign level. So this is exciting. And so what you can do here is, again, we can ask it for fields, right? So I can say ID, name, and maybe I want a daily budget. So if you have campaign budget optimization turned on, you will be able to access the daily budget information here. You can also have lifetime budget. I don't have this turned on for this campaign, so there's no information here. So what I want to do right now is actually get a little bit more information about this campaign. How well did it do? So what I'm going to do again is access the insights edge, right? So we have the campaign and we ask for insights. And what I want to know is, I want to know over its lifetime. So I'm going to say date preset equal to lifetime. What were the results? So to get the results, I add the fields parameter again, and I can now ask it for spent, impressions, and maybe CPM, CPC as well. So over its lifetime, we spent 260 euros. We had just under 14,000 impressions. The CPM was pretty high, 18 euros. And the CPC was €1.20. And so now the really interesting bit obviously is not CPC, CPM, but any type of offsite interaction that people did. And to get these type offsite actions, or if you have an app, these would be app events, what you need to do is you need to ask for actions. And so this is where this view maybe becomes a little bit annoying. So what you can see here now is that we still got the same information, right? We have spend, impressions, CPM, CPC. But we also have this new action field, and this is a nested list, right? So we now have a list of all of these actions and how often they happened. So we can go through this here. We have some type of custom pixel conversion. We have link clicks. We have landing page information, etc. I just saw that Caroline, you got an error. Most likely, you don't have the right permissions here. So if you don't see ads read, ads management, insights, etc., then you probably need to add this here. So you could try that out, and I hope it works out for you. All right. So if again, this is just a sample of sample information, right? So what we want to do now is actually work on something. So if you have a campaign where you actually can see a budget, then stay there. If not, remove everything up here and ask for the adsets. So in this case, we have 3 adsets and for this one campaign. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose one adset, click on the first one, and I want to read out its daily budget. So how do we do that? I can add a question mark again, add fields equal to daily budget. All right, okay, so I now have a daily budget. It is not 3,000. So any type of budget or bid information will always show up in cents or pence if you're in the UK, right? So it will show up not as euros, not as dollars, not as pounds, but it show up as cents or pence. So in this case, the daily budget is actually 30 euros, right? We can also ask for a bid amount. In this case, I don't have any. We can ask for a bid strategy. Oh, that doesn't exist. Bid strategy. And so the reason I don't have a bid amount is that actually I chose lowest cost without cap as a bid strategy, right? So it's just lowest cost in this case. So the way we can do this now is, we can use this now is, if I want to change this daily budget now, and I hope this campaign is not ended yet. Nope. All right. So in order to change this now, what I can do is I can actually tell Facebook to make a change. And the way to do this is by adding the daily budget as its own parameter here, and in here putting the new value. So I'm going to say, change this to 31 euros. So if you can do that, change the budget of a live campaign or another one. You can, if you don't have the right ID here, maybe go over to your ads manager and choose a campaign or ad set where you that you're actually happy to change. And so if we want to make any changes, we don't do this by doing a GET request, by doing a post, but by doing a post request. So I'm going to do this now with a GET request, and I will show you that nothing actually changed, right? I did a GET request, and that tells Facebook that I don't care about changing information, I care about getting information. And so in this case, it basically ignored this last part. But if we want to change it, I could put post, and when you do that, I now got a new daily budget. And if you did that right, I'm applauding you because you just made the first kind of change via the API. So obviously this is pretty exciting, and at the same time it's maybe a little bit dangerous because you can do a lot of things wrong here. If you now leave out a 0 or 2 because you think, oh, 31 euros, that's a great budget. If I did that now, luckily it actually told me that the adset budget needs to be at least 92 cents. That's good. But this could have happened, right? If I left out 1 0. Here now the new budget would be actually 3.10 euros, and that is not really helpful. And so you have to be careful what you do here, but you can change, you can do a lot of interesting things with this. So obviously these are just the foundations. So let's do one more thing for today, and then we can wrap it up. Maybe, yeah. Let's see if you have any questions. Officially, we have 6 more minutes scheduled. So let's see. So what I want to do next is, for this ad set, actually get its ads, right? So get the ads. So again, easy way, right? I have the ads edge for this ad set. And again, we don't want to post, but we want to get. If I used post, that would actually be the way to create a new ad, but I would need to give it a lot more information. So I'm going to do this again, get ads. And in this case, we have 2 different ad IDs. And I'm going to ask it a little bit more about the name as well as the ID. All right, so we have this one. I hope you have naming conventions like I do. That's a topic I always find interesting. So what we're going to do now is actually we'll take this this ID and click on it to actually use this one ad. And so for the ad, like one thing you need to know about the ad is that it's a little hard to get information from the ad. So obviously we can ask it for, how much money did it spend, and what were the results, and we do this again by using the insights edge and using some fields like spend, and you can say the date preset. So the time frame I care about was just the last 14 days, right? And we can do this. And I didn't have any results apparently in this time frame. All right, so if I do the last 90 days, this is my spend, right? So, but what I want to read out actually is, can I find out the URL that I was linking to? So the URL, the landing page I was linking to. And I don't know if you've seen this before, but so we have at Kitchen, and sorry for the shameless plug, but at Kitchen we have this thing called the link uptime monitor. And feel free to try it out at some point. But the idea of this link uptime monitor is that you access all of your ads, get all of the URLs, and programmatically check if it's still working, right? Or if it's still responding in a reasonable time. Because obviously if it's not responding in 10 seconds or 15 seconds or so, that might be a problem. So this link uptime monitor essentially does that for you for an account for all active ads. But it's pretty easy to kind of do the same thing for yourself. So obviously we need maybe 2 or 3 more webinars like these to get there, but I'm pretty sure you could. So what I want to figure out now is how do I actually get to this URL, and for that we will always on the ad level we'll have to get to the creative level. So what we need to do is, all right, did I choose the right one? All right, almost there. All right, okay. So so the right edge is add creatives, right? Add creatives, plural. And so when you click on this add creatives, maybe you know this from like way a long time ago when all ads were dark page posts, right? Or unpublished page posts, where basically an ad used an existing post and promoted that post. And this is kind of where this comes from. So in the API, when we want to access any information about the ad creative, that means the URL, the text, the image, video, whatever, we have to go through this edge, right? So the ad creative. So I'm going to click here, and now we're on the ad creative level. And so on the ad creative level, the way to find out information is through something called object story spec. And this is super random, right? And it's like probably one of the most confusing things about this, but I'll show you briefly how to get there from the reference. So I'll go here again to this, and we'll scroll all the way down where it says add creative. So I hope you get the point here. So the reference, add creative. So each ad will have one ad creative, and I'll zoom out again a little bit so we can see this. So when reading out information, let's look at the different fields that are available. And so for each creative, for example, we can ask it, what is your account ID? Like, what account do you belong to? And if you're using a dynamic creative ad, if you want to now get that information about the dynamic creative ad, and maybe some of you picked an ad that uses an asset feed in that sense, where you're using multiple different texts or multiple different images in the same one, what you would need to do is use this asset feed spec. So I'm going to go back here and say, here, I care about the field asset feed spec. And so in this case, in this ad, we actually used 2 different body texts and 2 different titles, right? And I'm going to go back here. And I actually care about the call to action type as well. So I'm going to ask it for the call to action type. And so I can see the call to action type is get offer. And let's see what else there is. So like I said before already, there's something called object story spec. object story spec. And I'm going to go here. And this is where I actually get the most interesting stuff, right? So in the object story spec, now I can see that this is the Facebook page we used. This was the Instagram actor ID, which is essentially the page because we don't have an Instagram account. And this is the link that we had. This is the caption that we used. And this is the call to action type. So if I now wanted to, check if this page was working, we cannot do this here, right? So we'd have to have a little script or, some little program that does that for us. But what we could do is we could say, and I hope you can follow along, is here's my ad account. Give me all ads. For all ads, get the ad creative. For each ad creative, read out this object story spec parameter. And in the object story spec parameter, go into link data and link, take this URL and open it. And obviously we would do that with not with a browser like I just did, but we would do this programmatically, and we could check, hey, is this still available? And if it leads to something like this, right, a 404, we could say, hey, this is not working out correctly. All right. This is it, I think, for today. So the one thing that maybe we could still do is actually realize that everything we just did with this Graph API Explorer is completely possible with just any browser. So this is the last thing we'll do, and maybe the next time we can pick up here, and we'll use this call, this information, maybe some data, and actually put it into a Google Sheet. So we'll make a request to the Facebook Ads API from a Google Sheet. And so I'll show you something really quick. So when using this path, right, when doing this request, when doing a GET request, this is exactly the same as calling the following URL. So you can hopefully, no, I just realized you cannot see this. So I'm going to go up here. Oh, no. So I'm going to type it out here, and you have to put it into your URL yourself. So here's what it is. Let me do it here. Okay. So the URL is graph.facebook.com/v6.0, right? This is the API version. And then after this, we use the path that we just used. So this exact path. And at the end, we need one more thing. So if I now use this and just paste it into a URL, right? Just copy paste it into a new tab in my browser, it would tell me, and I'm going to do it here. And sorry that you cannot see the. So now I have this plugin that transforms these kind of JSON requests into something a little bit prettier, but it actually says an access token is required to request this source. So the last thing that we need to do is actually at the end add one more parameter, and is access_token equal to this access token. So if you can copy it here and add it here, and then use that whole thing, go back to the tab that you just opened and paste it here. All right, now I'm calling a deprecated version. Let's use the 7. There we go. So we essentially have the exact same information that we just got from the Graph API Explorer, we also got in the browser. And so now that you have it in the browser, I hope you can see that you could also use it in a Google Sheet. So this information is essentially available for anybody at any point in time, as long as they have the access token and as long as they know kind of what object they're calling. I can recommend to get something like a JSON viewer, and if you want to try out for yourself how to pull this information into a Google Sheet already, you can look up something called import JSON. Import JSON. It's kind of like an additional tool that you can use. It's free to use, and you can basically pull this exact information into your Google Sheet. Now, just be careful. This access token, right, if you copied it just now over, you can actually use it and access any information that I have. So I'm going to invalidate it right after this, so nobody can do any harm with it. But if you just want to pull information into a Google Sheet and try out maybe getting some reporting there, or whatever information you want to have, make sure that you don't use an ads management token, but you only use an ads read token. So if somebody in your organization gets it, at least they can't do any harm. And this access token, whenever you log out of your Facebook account, or whenever you remove this application from your personal user account, it will automatically invalidate the access token. So right after this, I'm going to do that. And I hope you learned something. So I'll kind of go back here and just quickly stay in the comments. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining in. And I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. Let me know in the comments or in this live chat if there's anything else that you want to know right now. And if not, I hope we see each other again next week around the same time.